answer them for us. Sort of an intro to pro-organic. We have our Facebook page for pro-organic details and information. And then we have a Facebook group that we use for discussion. For membership or the consumers group, if you can go to our website, which is shown on the screen there, pro-organicbelize.org. The website has lots of information on it. The consumer group is a weekly pickup of pesticide-free produce. It's delivered on Fridays beside Hodes in San Ignacio, as well as to Belmopan. So if you're interested in that, just send an email to proorganicbelize@gmail.com. Okay, the speaker will do her presentation for 30-45 minutes. And then, like I say, if you have questions for Liz that you think of, just submit them to the pro-organic host during the presentation. And we'll do the question and answer, and then just a very quick conclusion at the end of that. So Liz, I will stop sharing and turn the screen over to you.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for inviting Humana to be a part of your monthly presentations. And it's an honor for me to be here and to meet with you and to also to represent Humana. So for this presentation, we'll be looking, as Jenny had mentioned, I'll be touching on some organic farming as well as climate smart agriculture. So one of the things the first thing I want to do is to give a little background about who we are. So Humana People to People Belize is an NGO that was established in 2007. We're located in southern Belize. Our main office is on the Monkey River Road. However, we do have like a satellite office in Bella Vista. Because of the variety of projects that we have going on, we are in a sense scattered all over the place. For example, my office is in Independence. We have a resource center that's located in Bella Vista, but then there's another office area that's also located in Bella Vista, because we work in the entire southern Belize, and we've also started to work. We were primarily working in the Toledo district, but we also now work in the Sand Creek district, and we have worked with 2 communities in the Belize district, which would be Mullins River and Gills Point Manatee. So what is our purpose? Well, primarily our purpose is to empower and to mobilize individuals, families, and communities to reduce poverty and vulnerability through local actions and capacity building. As we all know, in Belize, the southern districts, especially the Toledo district, is considered to be one of the poorer or the poorest districts in Belize. And so we find that in this area, we have people who have limited access to resources and infrastructure. And so we believe that by empowering people and families, that we are going to help them eventually to make improvements to their standards of living. Our mission then is to improve the standard of living and the way of life of those affected by poverty in Belize through local assistance, education, and also we do welfare programs. Our vision is to create development in the broadest sense, primarily through the establishment and the implementation of projects that transfer knowledge, skills, and capacity to individuals and communities in need of assistance to overcome poverty and dehumanized conditions. As we all know, in the Toledo district, that we have a large population of the indigenous Maya, but in our immediate locations of Caupen, San Juan, Bella Vista, Trio, San Isidro, we also have a large immigrant population. So our approach, we work shoulder to shoulder with vulnerable populations and traditionally marginalized groups from different ages and backgrounds in rural and hard to reach communities of Belize. Our approach is based on open dialogue, active participation, and collaborative work between individuals, groups, local leaders, government bodies, and the private sector. When we say shoulder to shoulder, at Humana, we actually mean shoulder to shoulder. We are often seen working in the communities alongside. So when we're doing farming, we're there alongside with them, planting with them, clearing the land. When we do refugee work, we go into the communities. We do gender violence, whatever issues are affecting our groups, we work alongside them. It's not only about going into these communities and maybe bringing in speakers or just sharing information, giving out pamphlets or putting up stuff on bulletin board. It's about working alongside them for them to recognize that we are a part of the process along with them. As a result of these communities being remote, we have worked as far as Machakilha and Graham Creek, San Benito Poite. Because they're hard to reach communities, that is the reason why we work alongside them, because too often these communities are communities that even though they are government agencies who would like to work with them, they either lack the resources or the personnel to go into these communities. And so we take it upon ourselves to actually find the most vulnerable communities, and we go into the communities to work with them. So as a part of being in these remote communities and having limited access to resources and infrastructure, then that is why we have started to focus on organic agriculture, because we recognize that these people rely quite heavily on subsistence farming for them to be able to sustain themselves, because they don't have the good roads to get to town in many of the cases, or even if they have the local community stores, they don't have the access to the stuff that we would find if we go into a supermarket or a store that we have in our communities, in our towns or our cities. So we recognize the entire history of where organic agriculture came from. And this is some of the information that we share with them, right? That we recognize that there were people who believe that the use of animal manures made into compost, if we do cover crops or crop rotation and we use biologically based pest controls or natural remedies to control pests, that it does result in a better farming system. We have found that in some of our most remote communities, these communities have already been practicing some of these methods. And so it's just about building on what they already have. We also share with them that there has now become the demand for organic food, right? More and more the world has become, and I'm citing here, some of you may be familiar with the publication of Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, which documents the amount of environmental damage that has been caused. And so by sharing this information with our communities, they're able to recognize how important organic farming is for the environment as well as for themselves. We also have them recognize that the demand for organic food has increased, and that by having greater environmental awareness, along with the concerns over health impacts, things like genetically modified crops, that because of people having more demand for these organically produced crops, then when it is possible for them to be able to produce surplus for them, they outside of what their family needs, and they're able to take it to the local market, that they can get good price. And that could supplement their income, because in the South, especially in our indigenous Maya communities, you find that there's very limited economic activity. So of course, we all know that the price of organic food is generally higher than that of conventionally grown food. And that is something that we share with them. And depending on the product or the season, then the price can go all the way up. So of course, we all know that organic farming is an agricultural system that uses ecologically based pest controls and biological fertilizers derived from animal and plant waste and nitrogen fixing cover crops. Modern organic farming was developed as a result of the environmental harm that has been caused by the use of chemical pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. In comparison to conventional agriculture, organic farming uses fewer pesticides. It also reduces soil erosion. It decreases nitrate leaching into the groundwater and surface water, and it also recycles animal waste back into the farm. These benefits, of course, are counterbalanced by higher food costs for consumers and generally lower yields. Indeed, yields of organic crops have been found to be about 25% lower overall because they're not using chemicals. However, this varies from crop to crop, but then the income that may be generated from the sale of organically produced crops would offset. Like, had it been the entire, for example, let's say they were producing 1,000 tons of tomatoes that would sell for $1,000 that was chemically produced, they may only produce 500 pounds of tomato, but the cost of organically produced tomato would actually maybe give them an income of $1,500. So it works out in that manner. So our work at Humana, one of the first things that we do is to teach our farmers to make nurseries, whether it be in seed trades, an area in the greenhouse, or on the open fields. Regardless of where the nursery is set up, we guide them in planting and caring for their seedlings without the use of chemicals. So to teach them about not using chemicals, we teach them about organic fertilizers, composting, and the use of manure. One of the key things that we do is that we have them recognize what is in their immediate environment, because oftentimes it becomes a choice between what is available and what finance they have access to. We try to encourage them to see what they have in their immediate surroundings that can be used, and this in turn frees up finance for other purposes. Some of the things, as you can see from the photograph there, depending, like I said, of what is available to them, rice trash, sawdust, cow manure, sheep manure, chicken manure, pig manure, their biodegradable waste. We've even constructed in some of our communities composting toilets that they can use after a period of time. The bathrooms come with 2 sections, so they use one side of it for 6 months, and then that is closed off. And then they use the other half of the bathroom for the next 6 months. And during that time, the first part has started to biodegrade. We also teach them to do composting and how to make what we call tea fertilizers. So we make a little tea. Then after we've produced it, we guide them on application and frequency. We advise them to utilize the same manner as they would chemicals, meaning that the frequency is the same. Let's say you were supposed to apply this insecticide or pesticides every 3 days, then it would follow the same cycle. But instead of using these chemicals, they would be using the tea fertilizer, or if it's something that they're using for pest management, it would be the same application cycle. So here we also teach them about natural pest management. For example, we teach them how to do yellow traps, but instead of getting the expensive commercially made traps, we would have them use get yellow plastics, and they could use shortening or grease or even bicycle grease, because the idea there is to trap the insects. We also have guide them in monitoring the plants and identifying the type of pests so that we can develop the appropriate remedy that can be applied. For example, like with tomatoes, we find that you have the white flies. And so we have found that molasses works for control of the white flies. And any family that is related to the tomato, the same genealogy, the molasses would work. Or if they have ants, that we would use soap and water. And there's a variety of different natural remedies. So we guide them in being able to apply the natural remedies. So as a result of that, then what we produce is going to be an all-natural crop. And this photograph that you're seeing here is actually a photograph that was of cabbages that was produced in Indian Creek. And one of the things we found that in working in Indian Creek is that the land is, a lot of the area is like clay and water bogged. And so by helping them to learn how to enrich the soil, they're proud to produce stuff that wouldn't normally have been produced without the aid of chemicals. As a part of our work, of course, one of the things that we do is to promote climate smart agriculture. And the reason why we do this is because we have recognized that the majority of the world's poor, especially in the target area that Humana works, that agriculture is their most important income, the source of income that they have. And so if we develop the potential to increase the productivity and incomes from smallholder crops, livestock, fish, or forest production system, it is very important for them to achieve food security. As we all know, climate change is happening all over, but the developing countries are those countries that we expect that would be hit the hardest. So as a result of that, it poses risk for agriculture, food, water supplies, and therefore resilience becomes a predominant concern. Also, we also recognize that agriculture is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions and that mitigation is important. And so the farmers, they need to adapt. And that's one of the things that we strive to share with our farmers or the people that we work with, that we need to adapt to climate change. So climate smart agriculture is the approach that we use to guide actions to transform the agri-food system towards green and climate smart resilient practice. There are three main objectives that we try to approach: sustainably increasing agricultural productivity and income, adapting and building resilience to climate change, and reducing and removing greenhouse emissions. And this is in line with the FAO strategic framework from 2022 to 2031. And they have four betters that they're striving for: better production, better nutrition, better environment, and a better life for individuals. And this is something that, as I mentioned earlier, that you see in the purpose of Humana, that we want better nutrition for the people we interact with, and that will come as a result of having a better environment, and that would lead to a better life for the individuals. We also recognize that our farmers are the primary custodians of knowledge about their environment. Whenever we go to work into a community, we don't go with the idea that we know it all, because every community is unique in that they have their unique. For example, Bella Vista, when you work at Bella Vista, their soil, because of the pine savanna, tends to be acidic. Indian Creek, as I mentioned, has a lot of clay, tends to retain a lot of water. The further down south we go in Blue Creek and Poite and Santa Teresa, we find more rich soil. So we recognize that they are the primary custodians of knowledge about their environment, their agro-ecosystem, their crops, their livestock, and their local climate patterns. And so adapting to climate smart agriculture must be related to the local farmers' knowledge, their requirements, and their priorities. So through our projects, we support our farmers to identify suitable climate smart options that can be easily adapted to their environment. Because once it can be adapted to them, and because we have their input, we're working shoulder to shoulder with them, then it becomes easier for them to implement, and they would take more ownership over the work that they're doing. Climate smart agriculture also relates to actions both on farm and beyond farm, and incorporates not only the technologies that we use, but also policies, institutions, and investment, which is why a part of our work, a large part of work also has to do with our collaborators, people who we work with. It's not only the work of Humana and the people, the participants, but also our collaborators. Different elements of the CSA include the management of farms, and we guide them in the management of farms, management of crops, livestock, And the idea there is to balance near-term food security and livelihood need with priorities for adaptation and mitigation. Ecosystem and landscape management to conserve ecosystem services that are important for, again, for food security, agricultural development, adaptation, and mitigation. And then we also look at systems for farmers and land managers to enable better management of climate risk, impacts, and mitigation actions. And then we look at changes in the wider food system, including demand-side measures and value chain interventions that enhance the benefits of climate-smart agriculture. One of the things that we always share with our the people we work with is that, in a sense, there is no such thing as a disaster. There's always going to be these environmental phenomena. It is our ability to be able to adapt and mitigate that would prevent these natural phenomena from turning into what we call, or what people would refer to as natural disasters. So as a part of our empowering initiatives with farmers, we engage in climate smart agriculture and organic through public education. And we promote, as you can see here, this is of a poster that was made to one of our activities that promotes organic. So we say grow organic, be organic, live healthy. And these are messages that they come up with on their own based on the different initiatives that we do. Our public education initiatives is done through community billboards, community meetings, community activities, and of course, we work with the school. We engage students at all levels because we recognize that our children, they are our future farmers, and they are the instruments that we need for necessary change. We also recognize, which is why when we work with the schools, we like to start from the very, very young, that children will go home and they will share their experiences that they have at school with their family members. For example, if we do a poster competition with young children, it is because we know that the children will not be able to do the poster on their own, that they would go home and engage other members of their family to assist them. Therefore, we end up reaching the entire family through that one child. And so the message is being passed on. Another way that we empower our farmers is having them attend trainings by other organizations. Like here, we took some of our farmers to the regeneration Belize that they have at the ministry, at the agriculture showgrounds. This is just one example, but we have them attend trainings by other organizations, whether it be Ministry of Agriculture, CARDE, the University of Belize, so that they can become more equipped with knowledge. Not only do we have them attend trainings, but we also bring trainers to them. And this is very important when working and empowering, like we said, working shoulder to shoulder. It's about going to them. So we also bring trainers to them in their own space and in their own time. And when we say in their own time, we mean, if it means that we have to meet on a Saturday morning, a Saturday night, if we have to go to a fajina, that is where we're going to be. Here you see, this is Ms. Foreman from Rural Development, and we also have Mr. Aiken there from the Caribbean Development Bank, and he came all the way from Barbados to do some training with them. So we also bring trainers to them. Some of the capacity building that we do include livestock care, livestock shelter, health, further the use of manure as fertilizer, conservation, agriculture and production, environmental protection practices, manure and compost management. We also do accounting and marketing because, as you said, at some point there is value added and we want them to be able to take their crops to the local market. Good agricultural practices. Here we see a training in silos. This is done to highlight the importance of food security, and this is done at schools, with farmers clubs, village councils. We do this throughout the community to highlight the importance of food security. We also train them in climate smart livestock pen construction. And again, this is to highlight, as you can see here, using touch. So where we support, and we're building alongside with them, we would support in a sense of, we'll provide the cement and the stuff that they may not necessarily have access to, but then we try to encourage them to use what they have locally. Because when you, we believe that if you give them everything, in the absence of that entire support, they would not be able to replicate or to duplicate what we have created for them. And by showing them that they have some of these same things in the community, then they're able to build these things on their own without requiring that support from an external donor. We also do see, and if you notice here, we're very proud that, as you can see, these are primarily women that are aiding in the construction of a greenhouse. This is done again in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture, who comes and guides us in the construction, but then they have to take part. And we believe in equal access and inclusion of women and children. So we have the women here, including in the construction of a greenhouse. Here we see irrigation installation. And again, you see these are all women. This is a group in trio. And as you can see, they even have their babies with them. And so while we may provide the equipment, the money or the investment in having the material there, we teach them how to install and care for the system. Because when that, as we all know, when you do project work has a life cycle. And at the end of the project, oftentimes we've heard that projects are done, and at the end of the project, the donor leaves and the project falls apart. By doing it this way, they're empowered and they're able to continue after the project because they know how to care. So here we see the installation of irrigation. So all our trainings and activities, we engage women, children, and the elderly. And oftentimes this means meeting at times that is convenient to the participants. And very important when we are working with our communities with respect to cultural traditions. We have had scenarios where, for example, in Santa Teresa, where our officers are men, but the women and the men in the community do not work at the same time on the plot. And so our officers have to go in and work one day with the men and another day with the women. So we have the utmost respect for cultural traditions and women. If it means working at night, as I said, time's convenient to them, we will work at night with them as well, because in some of our communities where men are the primary farmers, they have their subsistence farming that they go to their wamil in the mornings. And so when we need to teach them or to work with them, the only possible time that they may have may be in the evenings. And so we're there working with them, working shoulder to shoulder. Here we see again, teaching women how to deal with livestock. The agricultural component, we target two areas. We have the open and closed agriculture. And we work from two approaches. We have the demonstration plot and what we call the backyard gardens. The backyard gardens are primarily at their home or at what we would call their wamil. And the demonstration plot is based on the use of the Farmers Club model, which is unique to HUMANA. And in our Farmers Club model, we focus on providing support to farmers to make their operations more resilient, as well as build human capacity through training. The training of farmers are done in the Farmers Club model. And here we focus on organic farming and climate smart agriculture. The training of farmers in our model includes topics such as governance. And so we teach them how to, if they want to farm a group, their articles of association, their bylaws. So we teach them governance and management of a farmers club. We teach them climate smart agriculture, disaster risk reduction, construction and operation of irrigation systems, using solar pumps, because in some of our communities, they don't have access to electricity as yet, how to operate storage facilities like solar dryers, pre and post harvesting, improved and new techniques in farming, construction and operation of covered or the greenhouses, and the benefits of protected agriculture versus open field, and different practices for vegetable production and small livestock productions. What happens on the demo farm is that this is where we allow the farmers a common land to plant new crops and to practice new techniques, to have information on farm production and organic farming. So this demo plot that we do is where the farmers get to experiment, right? Because we don't want them in the beginning to go and use their land, right, with the new practices. And then maybe, as we already said, that sometimes when you do organic farming, the yield is less. And so on the demo plot, they can experiment with the new practices and crops while they continue to do their own production in their backyard gardens or on their own wamil. And then when they're comfortable with adding new crops and the vegetables, and when they're comfortable using the new methods, then they can adapt the methods to their farm. For the greenhouse, as I mentioned earlier, we do construction alongside our farmers so that they're able to construct another greenhouse on their own if necessary. The value of doing this knowledge became apparent in 2020 when we had hurricane threats in the south, and the Ministry of Agriculture is limited in resources to work in the entire Toledo district. And so we were very proud to see that our farmers, because they were a part of the building process, they were able to dismantle the greenhouse prior to the storm and reconstruct the entire greenhouse without the assistance of HUMANA or the Ministry of Agriculture. And that's what we mean by empowering, right? So they're able to continue, because had the storm come and destroy the greenhouse, then all of that would have been lost. But having them being a part of that process allowed them to be able to save the greenhouse. And if there was any loss to be had, it would have only been the crops that would have been in there at the time. But that entire investment would have not been lost. And again, all the work done in our greenhouse is done organically, no chemicals. And so they are taught how to set it up, how to create the beds, how to put down the irrigation, how to create for it, how to care for the irrigation, how tubes and everything that they have there. And so in the end, what we have is the crop that is produced by natural means. At the beginning of the development of all our lands, as we had mentioned, our demo plots, we do soil testing. We take soil samples and we send them outside to get the results. And this is done by the Ministry of Agriculture, CARDI. When the results come back, they're invited to visit the farmers and explain to the farmers the type of soil that they have, whether it's acidic or not. And when they understand what type of soil they have, then they recognize what they need to do to increase the fertility of the soil naturally. And with that knowledge, then the farmers are better able to manage the crops on the area regardless of the soil type. As I mentioned earlier, like Bella Vista is acidic, Indian Creek is waterbogged. So different areas will have different types of soil. So once they're equipped with the knowledge and the know-how of how to build their soil, then they're able to produce on the land. As you know, see here, again, they are part of setting down their own irrigation. And one of the important, if you notice here, you will see in the background there pineapple. Because one of the most important part of our work we do is providing farmers with what they want. When we provide seeds, it's not like we're going to go and buy seeds for Bella Vista, Trio, Indian Creek, Santa Teresa, and give everybody the same. Because we recognize that each one of them is unique. So pineapple may not sell in Corazon. So why give them pineapple? So we consult with our farmers and then they know what would sell in their area. And so we provide seeds that they see the benefits. Because again, if you provide material or equipment to people who they don't see the value of it, they will not care for it, they will not have interest in it, and they will not put the effort or take ownership for it. So by giving or providing our farmers with what they want, the result is them being more receptive and being more engaged. So while one may ask for peppers, another may ask for watermelons. These here, we are, this is jalapeno, and this one here is habanero peppers. And I chose these two photos because one of the biggest challenges we had when we started working in Bella Vista, when Cardi came, was to recognize that it was very acidic soil and it would be very difficult to produce. And even the farmers in the initial beginning, they were quite hesitant, which is why we, the demo plot is very important for us to show. And so by producing on a demo plot, the farmers are very excited to see, and actually Bella Vista was one of the first communities to actually start production. And this was in acidic soil, and this was done all naturally by simply using, in their case, they used manure. We used cow manure and sawdust. And then we did what we call tea manure or manure tea, and we use those as fertilizers. We also do livestock. The pens are constructed, they're climate smart, and they incorporate materials that can be sourced locally at minimal cost to farmers, because in the South, we have little economic activities, and quite a number of these people, they work in either like the banana farms, and so they have very limited income. The model pens are constructed by equipment that is provided by HUMANA, but the farmers are a part, again, just like the greenhouse, a part of the building process so that they can then replicate. So here, the first, where you see, this is in Corazon, where you see the big door, that is the part that was produced by HUMANA, meaning we provided the zinc, the lumber, everything for that. The second part, the back piece that you're seeing, that was done completely by the farmers on their own. When we showed up like a couple weeks later, they had already expanded because they were a part of the building process there. If you look in the lower corner in the back, you see a little bucket hanging there. We worked with Cardi, and we actually did worm production for them, which helps them to produce like composting as well. So we got them their worms, and then they were responsible for feeding and producing the worms so that they have that compost material. The animals were also, we also provide, HUMANA provides the farmers with what we call starting stock, and then we guide them how to care for the animals them. So for example, we would give them their first set of breeding pigs and slaughter pigs. So in one case, on the one project, we gave them 15 pigs. 10 was for breeding and 5 was for slaughter. And then we would also give them, like in the case of the chickens, we gave them their first like broiler set, and we guided them through the production to go what we call from chick to slaughter, and show them how to generate sufficient income to be able to continue the cycle, right? So they're able to replicate this cycle. So we give them 100 chickens along with feed, and they go through that chick to slaughter. And from that, the sale of that, and they choose how they want to sell the chickens, whether it's by slaughtering the chickens and selling them by pounds, or if they want to do a barbecue, we've had them do tamales, how they choose to raise income, and then they repeat the cycle. And in some cases, we've had a lot of our clubs branch out into layers, and again, they did this on their own from the income that they generate. And that for us is what we, as a result of what we believe is the empowerment of our people. As a part of our livestock, we also have a practice called a pass-on loan, what we call a pass-on loan program. This is where the farmers are given the initial livestock. And so like the breeders from the pig, let's say we were working with 15 farmers. When the pigs have young, then the young would not be kept as a part of the club. The young would be passed on to the individual members for them to take home and hopefully replicate the process. We've had quite a bit of success in this. Indian Creek is a very good example. They, at one point when their pigs from the initial 10 that we gave them from one breeding set, when they went into production, they had at one point over 75 piglets after they had crossed all of them. We actually have Mr. Roman Shaw and his son in Blue Creek, who have actually started their own pig production from the pass-on loan. This pass-on scheme is combined with specific training on the breeding of the animals, the feeding, the health care of the animals, the processing, the castration, if it's castration in the case of the pigs, castrations, vaccination when it comes to the chickens, all of that is included in our training. So one of the things you might be thinking is, so how does this tie into organic farming? Because quite often we think that organic farming is about the plants. Well, even for our livestock, as you can see in the photograph here, we encourage our farmers to rely less on commercial feed and more on natural organic feed for their animals. Again, because there's a cost associated with purchasing of commercial feed. And then when we have our, like we have some farmers working in Corazon, which is very far, and Santa Teresa, which is different from Villa Vista that has a highway. Again, it comes down a choice between finance. Do I spend money on feed for my animals or do I spend money on food for my family? So we encourage our farmers to rely less on commercial feed and more on natural organic feed for their animals. So we encourage them and we often provide the seeds to start them off, to plant corn, cassava, bananas, plantain, things that they can then turn to use to feed the animals. This reduces the amount of money that they need to spend on commercial feed, and then they can use the money for something else. It also results in the meat that is being produced, whether it's from the chickens or the pig, to be healthier consumption for them as an individual, or if they choose to sell it on the local market, it is healthier for consumption there. Even the use of plants, we encourage them to use as natural dewormers. So like we have planted neem trees in the communities and any other natural organic way that we can help them to deworm the animals to make it healthier for them. We encourage them to do that, which is why whatever livestock they are doing, those are the ones that we work with our collaborators to make sure that we have the appropriate natural remedies for them, which leads us to how do we make it possible? All right, because as I mentioned earlier, our work is achieved not only by myself and the officers that work in the field, but also by our project donors, without whom a lot of this work could not be done because they're the ones providing the funding. And we have our different partners. Here are some of the major ones that we have worked with when it comes to agriculture, because we have our other projects, like we have a refugee that's working with UNHCR. We have SIF, but these are the ones that we work primarily when it comes to climate smart agriculture and organic farming. The Met Office, you may say why? Well, farmers need to be aware of weather patterns because this impacts the types of pests and the amount of pests for given periods of the year. So the Met Office actually provides this information and along with the Ministry of Agriculture, so they know if it's going to be very rainy, then they'll have a high prevalence of a particular pest, then they can be prepared. So we work with them. Remember I said that a part of climate smart agriculture is mitigation. And so by having this knowledge and they know what pests to be prepared for, what they can expect, then they can better manage their crops. Of course, the Ministry of Agriculture is one of our main collaborators. They assist us with trainings, not only of the farmers, but also of our personnel at Humana. And where they cannot provide training, then they provide support in information sharing. Sometimes they give us, like the Ministry of Agriculture in PG has an entire book that they provided us with natural remedies, all different types of pests and the natural remedy for that. In some cases, they've also provided materials, seeds. They've actually built a cooling chamber in Indian Creek. So they're a major collaborator with us. Of course, the Ministry of Education, because we work with the children and the communities to share this information. Because as you mentioned earlier, eventually the children become our future farmers. Many of them go to farm with their families as is. And so when they have this information, it's very good. And so because we believe in respect, and we don't just go into our school, so we work through the ministry to ensure that we have that support from the ministry. NEMO helps us to make the farmers aware of potential disasters like floods, because we teach our farmers that, as I mentioned earlier, that a natural phenomena is always going to happen. We are in a hurricane belt. So we need to be able to recognize that every year that is a possibility. It rains a lot in the Toledo district, so they have to be prepared for floods. So by working with NEMO, it allows them to be able to be better prepared. If it means having to move their livestock or having to plant earlier in the year or to harvest quicker, things like that. NEMO is very important so that they can manage the impacts adequately. Being prepared, they can protect their livestock and crop. NAVCO and DAVCO, they're very important and instrumental in working with our communities in facilitating trainings and sharing information at community meetings. We also work with in the case of the Maya communities, we work with the alcaldes of the respective communities. We don't go into any community without first getting permission from the communities, again, because that allows them to be supportive of our initiatives and the messages that we're passing on, and allowing us to work well in the community without any kind of friction. Of course, rural development, because most of the target communities that we work in are rural communities. And so rural development allows us to better communicate in these communities and to communicate with them, in some cases to pass on messages to them before we get into it. CARDI has also been very instrumental. They're located in Cayo at Central Farm. And they've been very helpful. In the past, we used to work with the head of CARDI, which is Ms. Omaira Avila. And they were very instrumental in helping us to get the worms, soil tested, visiting each one of our farms, meeting with our farmers, training, even assisting in bringing in trainers from Trinidad to train in livestock. So they're very good to have for capacity building. And again, they go organic. And so this helps to reinforce the message that we strive to pass on to our farmers. So that is the work that we do. The gentleman here, some of you may know, I chose to put him here. This is Mr. Emanuel. He was the Southern Regional Coordinator for NEMO. He passed away, but he was a very good supporter, and he was very supportive of the work. And that's very important when you're working with collaborators, that you have people who are like-minded, who are willing to support your initiatives and will, like in his case, to visit the different farms, and so that they recognize how important their input is into the work that we are doing. So then in conclusion then, after we've looked at our work, we try to share our knowledge by investing our time and our resources. And we believe it's a win-win situation for everybody, for Humana, our personnel, as well as, of course, the farmers that we're working with, because we see potential. We find out what they need. So we'll work together to develop it. We try to equip them as much as possible what they need through empowerment we have found that the people will work harder, they work more for those who they care about, which is their family, and also those who care about them. Through our capacity building, we find that by sharing this information and giving our farmers what they need, what they think that they need to do well, that they won't just take for granted that they have all that they need. And so we engage them, we share the information, we get information from them, and then we give them the knowledge and the tools, whether it be tangible or intangible, to be successful. Our key motto, as I had said earlier, and we're very proud of this, is that we work shoulder to shoulder. And so we model at Humana, we model the behavior. We work with them in the farm, which is why we have the demo plots. And we are always mindful of our attitude or ethics, and we are aware that others are looking at us, at our work that we are doing. And so we engage as much as possible, and we model as much as possible when we're working with the various communities. So as we strive, in my closing thought, as we strive to empower people, we recognize that we are not only influencing the specific persons or people that we are working with, but also the people that they in turn will influence. So using the child as the example again, when we impact the child, we recognize that the child will also influence their family. And so that is empowerment, because empowerment extends long after Humana leaves, long after our project is over, long after we no longer have a direct project working with them, that work still continues. Even after our projects are finished, we still do follow up. We just don't leave our farmers there. We do follow up and monitor with them and continue to engage them so that if they need any support, we are still able to give them. As you know, Humana also, while we have our project donors, you may have heard we have our Humana People to People, the Humana shops, the clothing shops. We sell secondhand clothing. And I like to say that when you buy secondhand clothing from other stores, it goes to a good cause, but in our cases, the funds that we generate from our Humana shops goes back into our communities. So after the project has been finished from the US Embassy or CDB, when their funds are finished and their projects are finished, when our farmers still require seeds or some other kind of support, we still look to our income that we generate, and we try as much as possible to provide support to them in getting seeds and other materials that they may need to continue to be successful. Here again, you see our men and women working alongside each other. This was a construction of a greenhouse. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate being here. As I said, I hope that my presentation did share some valuable information. I hope, if not, at least you got to know about the work of Humana as we continue to work in our area. Our hope is to eventually one day work in other areas of the country. Our dream is to one day work in the entire country, but for now we are working down south, but we are more than willing to share with others. So if there's anybody who would like to contact us, there is a contact information. If you want to email us, info@humanabelize.org, or you can call us at the phone number there, 678-9943. As I mentioned, our main office is way on the Monkey River Road. You may actually, if you're in our area, you may find it easier to access the Refugee Resource Center that is located right on the highway in Bella Vista. And then there's also what we call a project office in Bella Vista that you can also contact us to get information or to have us work with you in any way that we can. Thank you so very much. And I now open the floor if anybody has any questions.
Okay, Liz. Ooh, that was great. And we do have some questions that people have sent in. I'll just take them in the order that I got them. Have you used neem as a natural pesticide? I remember you saying that you use it as a dewormer.
Yes, we for our demo plots, on the advice of Cardi, which gave us the spacing, each demo plot was provided with a certain, based on the area of the land, because one of the things that they had warned us about is that, you know, we don't want to plant them too close to each other. But yes, we have neem on all of our, we gave them to all our communities to put on either their demo plots or to plant on their own farm or their backyard gardens or their wamil to use as a natural insecticide. So yes, we do use neem.
Okay, where are the demo plots located?
We have 9 demo plots. We have 2 in Bella Vista. We have in Trio, Indian Creek, Blue Creek, Jordan, Santa Teresa, and Corazon Creek. And then we do backyard gardens in the various communities, but those are unique to the particular homes. We do go into the backyard gardens and we help them to simulate the similar things that we would do on a demo plot. Our demo plots are generally 1 acre, 1 acre. And so that allows us to do all the components there, livestock, open agriculture, and closed agriculture on 1 area. So they can see everything there. They learn everything on that area. But if needs be, we do work as well on with farmers on there, what we call the backyard gardens.
Okay. And we frequently get requests from people wanting to purchase pesticide-free produce or food in the South. Is there a contact person we could refer them to so these consumers can be linked to those farmers who grow organic produce?
Yes, one of what you could do is, because they're going through different cycles, so one particular farm, for example, may not be produced, because what we did in 2018, we actually formed 9 registered groups, and some of them focus on different crop production. So if you email Humana, you could identify or state what type of crop specifically you would be interested in, and then they can then give you the contact information for the respective group leader or who would be able to provide that particular crop that you'd be looking for.
Okay, all right. And one of the participants on the call, I see that he left, but it was Orlando Pulido, who's a journalist, and he asked if there was any plans to expand Humana to other parts of Belize.
Yes, we do intend to. Well, that is our hope to work. Like I said, we were primarily in the South. In 2018, we expanded to the Stan Creek district. And then we also worked with 2 communities in the Belize, Gales Point and Mullins River. It is our hope that we do expand in the entire country, but as a small NGO, and we have grown over the year, that is our intention to, we were looking initially at trying to actually replicate the same Farmers Club model in the Cayo district. But we do have limited personnel at this time. But yes, our intention is to expand to other parts of the country.
Okay. And how can farmers access your help?
As I said, they can just email. There's also the web page, but they can just email the info at Humana. And we do have our, what we call our community outreach officers that go into the community. And so they can contact the different community officers as they go in, as they visit the communities. But the main contact would be through the office. And then, because if they contact the office, if our particular officer is not, let's say you're from someone from Poite, right? Our officer may not go into that area very frequent because it's a very remote area. But if the request is sent to the main office, then we would send an officer to the area to see if we can assist.
Okay, but currently if it's a farmer, say here in the Cayo district, would they be able to send an email to that address and ask questions, or is there anybody in the Cayo district that would be able to go out and talk with them at this time?
They could send the email with the questions to the email they can send the email to this email that you have here with the questions. And also, if they would require someone to visit, then they could also request it there as well. And then we would do our best to facilitate someone to be in the area. Because as I said, right now, our offices are primarily, we're working in the south. We don't have any, we have done trainings in the Cayo district, but we don't have anybody stationed in that area. But if we need to send someone there to facilitate a training, HUMANA is more than willing to do so.
Okay. Yeah, Karen, it's an excellent presentation, excellent work. Kudos to HUMANA.
Thank you.
I agree. It's quite a task that y'all have taken on. But I know you said that you're primarily focused on the areas like in the South where the people just don't have access to what they may have access to in other parts of the country. So is that where you're going to keep the focus for now, is to areas that just don't have access to maybe the resources or the personnel?
No. As I said, one of one of the things that we're trying to work on that is when we look at because we were established here, we do see a lot of the need, right now we're trying to work, we had established the first solar powered radio in Machakilha and Graham Creek. So there are other areas where if we see the need that we would go into, because Machakilha and Graham Creek, for example, we haven't done any agricultural work in that area. We have installed solar radios there, and we've done capacity building. Mullins River and Gales Point, we did food security, silo storage, and we've done some work in there. So it's not that we're only limiting ourselves to the people in this area, but we try to see how much we can reach out based on the funds that we have as an NGO, as well as donor funds. Because as I said, the infrastructure that we had done for the establishment of the demoplex and the building of greenhouses and pens and provision of animals and stuff, that was a huge undertaking done on the project from the Caribbean Development Bank. So if we were to get funding, because that was, I think that one was $1.2 million. So because we worked with 11 communities in that project there, if we were to get funding for other areas or other parts of the country, we may find that we would definitely do it, and we may actually be able to do more, because like in the case of the South, a part of that investment had to be done on solar pump and solar panels, because there's a lack of electricity. There, in some cases, there was even the lack of a water system, so we had to dig wells. If we were, for example, to get that same type of funding for something in the Cayo district, then we may not need to invest in solar panels and solar water pumps and things like that. So the monies could be allocated to needs that would be more applicable or relevant to that community. As I indicated earlier, one of the things we do whenever we're developing proposals or project is looking at the community or the target area, the target people, in this case, the target farmers, and looking at what they need. I always like to tell my farmers or the communities I work with, I cannot give you a horse if you need a cow. So we don't write our proposals or projects or develop our ideas without having first come in contact with the communities. So if they're, for example, let's say you have in your area, you see the need and would like to work with HUMANA, then it's a matter of us working with you or the farmers, before a project is approved, working together to identify what the needs are. And then we work collaboratively, shoulder to shoulder, to develop a project that would meet the needs of those farmers unique to that environment.
That makes total sense. And is Humana always looking for volunteers?
Yes. Actually, I don't know if you had seen, there was a gentleman in the picture with the women doing the irrigation, the baby in the hand. There's a guy in the corner. He's not an employee of Humana. He was actually a volunteer. Actually, I'll be honest, when I do my projects, I am known for that. I like to beg. And so I often have quite a bit of volunteers who work with me. And the good thing is that there are a lot of people who are willing to give of their time. And we definitely welcome volunteers. Again, because it helps the participants to recognize that Humana is not doing this work for the benefit of Humana, but for the benefit of them. I often tell when we're experimenting on the demo plots, for example, and they would say the seeds, you know, and they're hesitant to use a particular technique. And I would tell them, well, on the bright side, you know, it's not your loss right now. You know, it's Humana investing in these seeds, and there's a potential that we may lose it. Here's your chance to experiment. And so it gives them a peace of mind to know that Humana is willing to take that risk alongside them. And so it's always good when we get volunteers, and we are always looking for volunteers, and we welcome volunteers to work with us, to work in the communities. My little dog is being a pest right now. Hey.
They have a mind of their own and their own time schedule.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. I know at least 3 of us on this call that have dogs, so we understand. I don't see any other questions. Does, I know Mary said thank you and would love to get a copy of the natural pest recipes from Central Farm and get some red worms. Yeah, so any other questions for Liz? Doesn't look like it. Well, I know that on behalf of Pro Organic, we got lots of information, and just with what you're doing, it's definitely kudos. And we appreciate you taking the time to put together this presentation and share with us what Humana is doing, and you know, see how organic could be a part of that in some way. So thank you so much. And if there's no other questions, we will call it a day.
Great. But once again, on behalf of Susan and I, thank you so very much for inviting us. And if at any time you would like to invite us again, we'd be more than willing to be a part. But thank you so much for inviting us.
Well, thank you for agreeing to do this. And it was a wonderful presentation, very informative and very informative. Thank you.
I'm already texting the young man that contacted me from Toledo who wants to know about organic farming. So you should be hearing from him. His name is Mr. Koch.
No problem.
Okay, great. Good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, we will call it a day for day. Thank you.